I'm Julie Price, and I'm a member of the Social and Environmental Justice Committee here at UUCD. And before COVID, I was also our pianist and choir director. This morning, we are focusing our attention on the borderlands, the margins, the places where disparate things and people come together. We focus on the borderlands to explore its wisdom and blessings. In a poem, Gina Valdez writes, hay tantísimas fronteras que dividen a la gente, pero por cada frontera existe también un puente. This translates into English as, there are so many borders that divide people, but for every border, there is also a bridge. As we worship today, let us come together, bridging the gaps between us and between the present and the future we long for, when the earth and all her people are seen, valued, and free. Our gathering music is A Better Place from Playing for Change. Individual artists from around the world are noted in the video.
Freedom and justice is the melody that let us shine on. If you feel it through the music, we can make this world a better place. Freedom and justice is the melody that let us shine on. If you feel it through the music, we can make this world a better place.
Live together, love forever. It's the only thing we can do. I mean, saying we're gonna make it through. Oh, yeah.
Freedom and justice is the melody that let us shine on. If you feel it through the music, we can make this world a better place.
African, American, de man är på Don Ben. Asian, Européen, de man är på Don Ben. Salut, salam, shalom, salut, salam, shalom. Noir ou blanc, rouge ou jaune. Nie po bokiem, nie po bokiem, nie po jale, nie bon. Nie po bokiem, nie po bokiem, nie po jale, nie sak. Nie po bokiem, nie po bokiem, nie po tomadama.
Freedom and justice is the melody that let us shine on. If you hear it through the music, we can make this world a better place. Freedom and justice is the melody that let us shine on. If you feel it through the music, we can make this world a better
Good morning. My name is Karma Amos, and I'm honored to serve as the minister of the Unitarian Universalists of Central Delaware and to welcome you to worship this morning. Whether this is your first time with us or you're back after a while, or this is part of your regular weekly routine, we are so glad that you're here, and we hope that you'll find some encouragement this morning and room for your spirit. In addition to our worship each Sunday at 10, we meet on Tuesday nights at 7 o'clock for a more informal time of check-in and sharing, and we invite you to join us for that gathering. By way of announcements this morning, I want to let you know, if you haven't seen already, that we will be having in Dover an interfaith prayer vigil for Ukraine next Sunday on March 13th in the evening at 7 p.m. At 30 East Lockerman Circle. And David Roll Leclerc is our rep for the planning group and participant group, and he will also pass along any informational updates that you need. So thank you, David, for representing us in that gathering. I hope that many of you will be able to make it. And now, as we prepare ourselves for worship, let us take a deep breath and a moment of silence together. And remember this, that whoever you are, whomever you love, wherever you've been, whatever you've done, whatever your religious beliefs are or are not, you are welcome here in this spiritual community. However you move in this world, how much or how little is in your bank account or wallet, and however you are feeling, whatever you are carrying in these moments, you and all of who you are welcome in this spiritual community. We're all enhanced by being together.
As we light our chalice today, thinking about borders and blessings and ceremonies and crossings, to lift up, I can't read this, to lift up a person from, we lift up a poem from Naomi Shahib Nye, I apologize for that, called Cross the Line, in which she shines a light on historical incident when there was a blessing precisely at the border between people, between countries, and between ideologies. Naomi writes, Paul Robeson stood on the northern border of the USA and sang into Canada, where a vast audience sat on folding chairs waiting to hear him. He sang into Canada. His voice left the USA, where his body was, not allowed to cross that line. Remind us again, brave friend, what countries may we sing into? What lines should we all be crossing? What songs travel toward us from far away to deepen our days? As we light our chalice, may this flame illumine the possibilities of hope that we can find or create at the arbitrary borders that divide us. Please join me in our unison affirmation. The words are in the chat box. Love is the spirit of this church, and service its law. This is our great covenant to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Please sing along in your own environment with our opening song, Singing for Our Lives by Holly Near. This version is from Michael Tacey.
We are gentle and great people, gentle, angry people, and we are singing for life. We are the blend of many colors, and we are singing for life. We are the blend of many colors, and we are singing for lives. You feel all the hurt and weary people. We sing for lives. We are hurt and weary people. We are singing for lives. We are gentle, loving people, and we are singing for life. We are gentle, loving people, and we are singing for lives.
Good morning. My name is Deborah May, and I'm a charter member of UUCD. Each morning or each week at UUCD, we include a brief UU moment in our worship service that serves to make us aware of and nurture our connection to the larger body of Unitarian Universalists and the Unitarian Universalist Association that binds us together. Today, we share a poem or prayer for Unitarian Universalists by Stephen M. Schick in his book, Be the Change, Prayers and Meditations for Peacemakers and Justice Seekers. In doing so, we also hope to feature the uniquely UU publication house called Skinner House Books. Skinner House was founded by the Unitarian Universalist Association as an imprint of Beacon Press in 1976. And today it aspires to inspire and engage readers in the intersection of progressive values and life's biggest question. You can purchase books from Skinner House at the UUA bookstore in spirit at uuabookstore.org. Here is the prayer. Let us read it together in the spirit of prayer and meditation. Spirit of my longing and lonely heart, help me travel through the barren borderlands that separate me from others. Teach me to willingly explore relationships with those who frighten or threaten me. Grant me the courage to risk confidently my own comforts, that I might make others more comfortable. And when I am burdened by the isolating choices I have made, grant me the wisdom to invite a stranger to travel with me. Open my heart to my new companion's needs and desires until I relax my defensiveness and become a calming presence. As we travel, grant me the vision to notice how each step we take together moves us closer to the promised land where all souls grow in hope and the resilience of love.
Hey everyone, my name is Chris Tomasi. I am the author of Borders, and I'm excited to read this virtually to all of you today. A little fun fact, I actually attended the Hanson Elementary School myself and have nothing but great memories of my time there. And I hope you all are enjoying it yourself as well. So, without further ado, here's Borders, written by me, Chris Tomasi, and illustrated by Mark Breyer. If kids were in charge of making the map, would there be order behind each border? Would country lines be thin pen scribbles or fall from a brush in thick paint dribbles? Which direction is best? North, east, south, or west? What shapes would they be? Both big and small? Most states wouldn't look like shapes at all. Would 50 be plenty? Or would they settle with 20? Would capitals exist? Or be kept off the list? Would town lines be jagged, curvy, or straight? Who knows just what the kids would create? Would kids have a conference every year to conquer fear and spread good cheer? Would they meet to agree upon a name or choose to keep each name the same? Why argue over what goes where when all of us could easily share? Could anyone come our way and stay to laugh and live and love and play? What if we built trust instead of a border and as a result restored world order? When all said and done, it sure sounds fun because no matter the lines, we all are one. Go ahead, I'm tired of asking who, what, and why. Pick up your pen and give it a try. I hope you enjoyed the story. I can't wait to see what you all come up with while making the map. And again, hope to see you soon.
Good morning. I'm Alex LeClaire. I participate in the SCJ committee and I lead the Pride subcommittee off of SCJ. So this is our moment of joys and concerns, things that you are worried about, things that are on your mind, happy things that you want to share. Please do so. Remember to unmute and then mute yourself. If you go back to gallery view, you'll see all of us. And if you hover your mouse, you'll see the mic's on and off. And respectfully take your turn. We light one final candle for all the joys and concerns in our hearts, spoken and unspoken, and in solidarity with ourselves and our community, and for those who could not be with us today.
Good morning. My name is Yolanda Jackson, and I am currently the chair of the Social and Environmental Justice Committee, and also a representative on the board of directors for the DIMH. As Unitarian Universalists, a central part of our worship in person and online is the opportunity we all have to practice the art of generosity and the spiritual practice of gratitude. Our gifts to our congregations are what allow our communities to live into our calling and mission. We are grateful to you for the many ways you support our community, including your financial pledgings and offerings. Your gifts matter, and it's one of the ways that you make this world a better place. For those who are making pledges or who want to contribute to UUCD, please visit uucd.org and click on Support UUCD for more information about how to donate online or by mail. One of the ways that our congregation demonstrates our collective generosity is with our Share the Plate program, in which we benefit a local nonprofit organization that shares our values and principles and is doing wonderful work to meet the needs of our community. The way Share the Plate works is that any donations you make to UUCD that are not designated to pay a pledge or otherwise support UUCD are donated to the charity that has been designated for the month. All donations received by the end of the month will be given to that month's recipient. For March, our chosen Share the Plate partner is DIMH, the Dover Interfaith Mission for Housing. Church's representative on the board of directors of DIMH, I'm very happy to contribute to the unique diversity currently displayed on the board. The representatives include clergy and other representatives of various faith groups and even local politicians, all united in our desire and goal to help the local homeless populations and improve the lives through emergency housing and feeding, finding and seeking employment, assist with more permanent housing, and to assist in helping them successfully transition back into society. Our offertory music for today is Borderlands by Tom Reed. Thank you.
We have no real differences in pounds, feet, or inches, we're the same. And if the skin that we're living in is bruised or abused, we feel the pain. When they try to divide us by the things that define us, we're afraid. I'm not playing the game, no, I won't be contained. I'm borderless, breaking down barriers, borderless, no walls between us, borderless, nothing's gonna keep me in or keep me out. Borderless, breaking down barriers, borderless, no walls between us, borderless, nothing's gonna keep me in. They try to manipulate us, carve up and separate us out. And the truth doesn't matter when the headlines all pander to our doubts. Then they draw up the lines, push us out to one side, and we've been named. I'm not playing their game, no, I can't be contained. Borderless, breaking down barriers, borderless, no walls between us, borderless, nothing's gonna keep me in or keep me out. Borderless, breaking down barriers, borderless, no walls between us, borderless, nothing's gonna keep me in or keep me out. They're coming down, coming down, coming down now. Coming down, coming down, coming down. Coming down, these walls won't keep me in or keep me out. They're coming down, coming down, coming down now. Coming down, coming down, coming down. Coming down, these walls won't keep me in or keep me out. Nothing in between us. I need to be with you. Borderless, breaking down
Good morning. I am Carrie McElwee. I am your board president right now. And our reading this morning is an excerpt from Gloria Anzaldúa's book, Borderlands, La Frontera, the New Mestiza. This is a book written from her perspective, growing up along the Texas-Mexico border. It is about the experience of being caught between two cultures, an alien in both. The US-Mexican border es una herida abierta, excuse any mispronunciations, an open wound where the third world grates against the first and bleeds. And before a scab forms, it hemorrhages again, the lifeblood of two worlds merging to form a third country, a border culture. Borders are set up to define the places that are safe and unsafe, to distinguish us from them. A border is a dividing line, a narrow strip along a steep edge. A borderland is a vague and undetermined place created by the emotional residue of an unnatural boundary. It is in a constant state of transition. The prohibited and forbidden are its inhabitants. Los atrevidos live there. The squint-eyed, the perverse, the queer, the troublesome, the mongrel, the mulatto, the half-breed, the half-dead. In short, those who cross over, pass over, or go through the confines of the quote normal, unquote. Gringos in the US Southwest consider the inhabitants of the borderlands transgressors, aliens, whether they possess documents or not, whether they're Chicanos, Indians, or Blacks. Do not enter. Trespassers will be raped, maimed, strangled, gassed, shot. The only, quote, legitimate, unquote, inhabitants are those in power, the whites, and those who align themselves with the whites. Tension grips the inhabitants of the borderlands like a virus. Ambivalence and unrest reside there, and death is no stranger.
Several weeks ago, when I conceived of this worship service and did the planning, I had no way of knowing that the world would be in a state of war on this particular Sunday. The invasion of Ukraine, the loss of lives on both sides of various borders, and the fear and trepidation that the people the world over are experiencing casts a long shadow over my reflections today. I had already prepared to talk about the ways in which the borderlands and margins of our world are places not only of danger and fear, but also and importantly, of blessings and wisdom. I had not, however, prepared for the topic to feel as big, as confusing, as charged, as heavy, or as important as it does today. There are at least two things that I think I know about this topic. First, borderlands are dangerous places, life-threatening and scary places sometimes. And secondly, there are blessings to be found in borderlands, and their inhabitants have wisdom we all need. Ambos, or los dos, as they say in Spanish, both of them. And in fact, we live in a both and world, a world in which conflicting ideas, notions, and perspectives can all be true at once. And if I'm going to make any sense today, it will be essential for all of us to keep this in mind. Two or more profoundly different things can be valid at the same time. Yes, it's messy. Yes, it's dissonant. Yes, it's extremely difficult to hold paradox and to make peace with ambiguity, and it is reality. So let me begin by acknowledging the terrifying experience of the 1 million+ refugees crossing the borders of Ukraine, roughly 250,000 people being processed each day so far, with more and more waiting. This is, of course, rightly dominating the news. And according to the International Rescue Committee, there are now more than 82 million refugees and displaced people around the world, in over 20 countries in Africa, in Afghanistan, Myanmar, Pakistan, Bangladesh, in Iraq, Syria, Jordan, Yemen, just to name a few. This is evidence alone for the claim that literal borderlands, those arbitrary lines between countries and provinces, states and regions, they can be very dangerous places. And many people, for good reason, want to avoid or move through them as quickly as possible. And that's just the literal kind of borderland, which today, among all days, it is necessary to acknowledge. There are also metaphorical borderlands, which is where I thought I'd be spending most of my reflection time today. Those are the less tangible places where people exist in the margins or at the edges of various states of being. What's most often worst of all is when the literal and the metaphorical collide, when those who are marginalized by their identity or their current life circumstances also find themselves standing at, moving through, or being turned away from literal borders. In those cases, people who are already at risk just because of who they are, whom or how they love, what they do, or what they do or don't possess, also find themselves needing to seek asylum to avoid violent life or death situations in the places where they literally reside. These are the ones who are often forgotten in mass emergencies, because those who are not marginalized are still centered in our awareness and our conversations during a crisis, just as they are in so-called normal settings. One of the many tragic stories that I heard on the news this week was told by a doctor who set up a clinic at one of the checkpoints between Ukraine and Poland to help treat those in need of medical care as they made their way across the border. He told a story of a Ukrainian man who had mental health issues and had been institutionalized in Ukraine for 20 years. The institution where he lived was bombed this week and completely burned to the ground. He and other patients, people who were ill-equipped to do so, had to figure out what to do when everything they knew, everything that had provided a sense of stability, disappeared in an instant. In the case of this man, who suffered from Tourette's syndrome, among other things, he just followed the crowds all the way to the border, facing danger all along the way, even from his fellow travelers, because while he was harmless, people were frightened by the verbal and ambulatory outbursts that were beyond his control. And we know that those who face mental health problems are marginalized already in society. When they are also facing a humanitarian refugee crisis, along with hundreds of thousands of others who were not previously in a state of vulnerability, they are often the first to be overlooked, harmed, or killed. This is just one example of how people living in multiple margins or borderlands face heightened danger. I spent most of my days this week working with some friends and colleagues in Romania as they worked around the clock to try and assist LGBTQ Ukrainian refugees across the border into slightly safer countries, most of the time just as transit locations before they could move further away. Many of these people were in a precarious position as Ukrainians whose risk was compounded by the marginality of their queer identity. In one case, for example, a young trans man and his pregnant spouse were finally, gratefully, smuggled late at night across the border to Moldova, where they arrived safely in Chisinau to await further help. Now, why were they more marginalized than others? Why did they need extra and specialized assistance? Because the gender presentation of one of them did not match the gender designation on their official passport. Their name did not match the name on other paperwork. Their marriage and the rights associated with it are not legally recognized. This is not to mention the fact that anti-queer sentiments are quite high in that entire region, even on a normal day. My friend, who founded and runs a nonprofit in Romania, was visibly knackered and close to tears as he worked with me on Zoom to launch a fundraiser to financially support their efforts, at the same time as he took call after call from allies on the ground with updates about the status of various people trying to cross the border. Now, those are just two isolated stories of way too many. I know that you've seen the heart-wrenching footage, miles of backed up cars, overly crowded train stations, long lines of displaced people trying to avoid becoming casualties of war. Many of you have friends and family who are directly affected on all sides of various borders. You know and have heard other stories, and your hearts may also be breaking as mine is. It can hardly be denied, especially right now, that borderlands can be dangerous places, life-threatening and scary places sometimes. So you might be skeptical when I claim that there are blessings in the borderlands and that the inhabitants of both literal and metaphorical borderlands have wisdom we all need. So let me try to explain, beginning with the blessings that might be present at literal borderlands. Right alongside the stories of unnecessary tragedy, pain, and loss of life are stories of extraordinary human courage and compassion. Sometimes at borders, people who do not have to do so are moved to action because they know the borders are arbitrary and they desperately want to help. Borders are drawn and redrawn that separate friends, families, and people who before the line was drawn considered themselves compatriots and comrades. People who are close to the borders are able to see this up close, while that reality is often obscured from view for those of us further away. And so many people sacrifice their own comfort and safety to be in solidarity with those who are suffering. Now, I'm not suggesting that we should be comforted by the kind of sentiment from Fred Rogers of Mr. Rogers' Frame, whose good advice to children to look for the helpers has been twisted into something it was never meant to be for an audience it was never meant to serve. I'm not trying to overshadow tragedy with Monty Python's always look on the bright side of life kind of thing. What I am suggesting is that there is a fundamentally good part of humanity that sometimes expands and is amplified precisely at borderlands, transforming fear into courage, resignation into resilience, self-centeredness into compassionate connection with the other, and unspeakable ugliness into glimpses of beauty. One of the blessings of borderlands is the witness and the tenacity of people who will not capitulate to anything that restricts their compassion to themselves or only their own particular group or nation. In other words, borderlands are sometimes the birthplace of a different type of human relationship that embodies our best aspirations. In particular, for UUs, borderlands can be the location where a respect for the inherent worth and dignity of all people becomes more than mere words. Former Anglican priest and theologian Barbara Brown Taylor once wrote of her own experience. Reading the newspaper, I see a map of the world with symbols denoting war, earthquake, famine. There are black lines separating this country from that, this people from that. I note with some relief that the area in which I live is free of symbols. I look once and think, thank God I'm an American. I look twice and think, God help me, I'm an earthling. And in that imaginative act, my relationship to the world in which I live is changed. That kind of personal and spiritual transformation, that kind of blessing, often takes place precisely at borders when their arbitrary and deceptive nature is exposed. That is a blessing both in and from the borderlands, in as much as it takes place in the people who live there, as well as in those observing from afar if they're paying attention with their hearts. And that should not be underestimated as a force for good in the world. Because without that shift of mind and heart, without that opportunity to re-envision how we relate to the world and her people, the possibilities of peace may continue to slip away. Life at the borders is raw and real. It takes on urgency, color, texture, stark contrast. It can rearrange our priorities and our commitments in ways that may never otherwise occur. And that can be a source of blessing right alongside the concurrent tragedies that warrant our outrage and grief. Now, metaphorically, there are also blessings at borderlands or margins. When the farce of many oppositional binaries, life, death, rich, poor, man, woman, black, white, straight, gay, abled, disabled, when that farce is revealed, the spectrum of realities, the shades of gray, are made visible. It's also true that the transition points along the spectrum, when one reality blurs into or gives way to another, those points are often the locus of beauty, inspiration, creativity, and meaning. Let me give just a couple of examples. The first is an experience most of us have had or will have at one time or another. When someone is born or dies, there can be a sort of liminal sacred space. The Celts describe it as a thin place or a veil, when the more of our existence, the mystery, is experienced for a time. I've been with people who are dying, and there is often an indescribable yet undeniable awareness of something holy. I've been in hospices and hospital rooms when someone is approaching death, and their last interactions with loved ones often facilitate healing, reconciliation, and the blessing of peace. That is not everyone's experience, of course, and it is almost always accompanied by pain, loss, and mourning. But it's very hard to deny its blessing when those present are attentive to it. That borderland between life and death can also be a source of blessing in the other direction as new life emerges. You don't forget those experiences, whether you're the one giving birth, helping to deliver it, or simply present for it. There is also a lot of pain involved in the birth process, I'm told, which is just another example of the both and. Extraordinary pain and blessing can occupy the same space, and our experiences confirm that this is true. Another example is the Two-Spirit people of Native American or First Nations Canadian cultures, known by other names in various Indigenous traditions. Two-Spirit people occupy that borderland between genders or sexualities, somewhere along the spectrum of what is considered masculine or feminine. In many tribes, Two-Spirit people are particularly revered as keepers of wisdom that others do not possess. They are thought to see and understand the sacred and human reality in broader and more nuanced ways than others. And finally, more generally, marginalized people, People who live on the fringes or edges surrounding those who hold power and privilege have a blessing of insight often that others don't. It is also true, of course, that life as a person marginalized by race, ability, gender, sexuality, poverty, health status, and other such things is often dangerous, fragile, and difficult. Those who cannot or choose not to conform to what others deem normative may experience blessings. I believe they do. And they also experience hardship. One of the blessings of the borderlands, both literal and metaphorical, is a gift of vision, of being able to see clearly what is not visible to those on one side or another. Borderlands are places of gradients, fusions, and transitions that are not always just something to pass through so that one can be on one side or the other. Those who live there, those who inhabit the borderlands, the ones Gloria and Saldua called Los Atravesados in our reading today, they have wisdom the rest of us need if we really want to understand and positively transform the world. I know that was a lot. I honestly didn't think it would be that much when I said to myself, why not talk about the blessings of Borderlands? That sounds fun and interesting. And I really do think it's a topic worthy of our sustained attention and reflection. I know that I have much more to think about and learn, much more awareness and consciousness raising to do. And I think of that as very important spiritual work. Given our current context, I can't think of a better way to wrap up this reflection than with another poem by Palestinian American poet Naomi Shihab Nye from her book, You and Yours. It's called During a War. Best wishes to you and yours, he closes the letter. For a moment, I can't fold it up again. Where does yours end? Dark eyes pleading, what could we have done differently? Your family, your community, your circle of earth we did not want, we tried to stop, we were not heard by dark eyes who are dying now. Oh, how easily they would have welcomed us in for coffee, serving it in a simple room with a radiant rug, your friends and mine. One of the blessings of the borderlands that I pray those who are in most peril right now will experience is the knowledge that we belong to and with one another, across borders, beyond divisions, purposefully occupying the generative and sacred space between us, yours, theirs, and mine. May it be so. Our closing song this morning is We Would Be One from our UU hymnal, Singing the Living Tradition. And this version is led by Eli Sauls from the Unitarian Universalist Church of Lancaster.
We would be one as now we join in singing our hymn of love to pledge ourselves anew to that high cause of greater understanding of who we are and what in us is true. We would be one in living for each other to show to all a new community. for tomorrow, a nobler world than we have known today. We would be one in searching for that meaning which binds our hearts and points us on our way. As one we pledge ourselves to greater service, with love and justice strive to make us free.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Inasmuch as you are able, go forth from this place in peace. Breathe in peace, breathe out love. Be present to yourself and to one another. Continue to hold out hope for all of the people of the world who live in and bring wisdom from the borderlands. Our virtual worship has ended, but our connection to one another, to people around the world, and to the earth endures. Go blessed to be a blessing for others.